Hey everyone, Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show, here for episode number 3 in our 8-part series, Scaling Your Syndication Business. And this one, we're going to be talking about something we call your sweet spot, finding your sweet spot, helping other people find their sweet spot, and really the secret sauce or the magic power of getting everybody on the bus in their sweet spot. And so joining me to help explain all of this is Staci Gray from Organize to Scale. Hey, Staci.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Very, very fun doing this series with you. As always, I'm learning a lot and couldn't be more proud of you and all of the things that you're accomplishing in your business, but also in the lives of so many syndicators now in our program that have come to you and said, hey, I've got this big dream. I've got this big vision. I have these ambitions, but I am just overwhelmed with how much there is to do. I can't quite figure out how to scale. I don't know how to get people on board. I don't know how to organize them. I don't know how to lead them. I know it can be done, but I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And so that's what this whole series is about, is explaining to people how to do that. I guess right out of the gate, before we even get too deep into this, Stace, you created a special report that is a way for people to learn. It's free, a way for people to kind of get started on the concept of scaling. What is that report and what's in it?
It's called 4 Tips for Organizing Your Syndication Business to Scale. And it's the 4 things that I have seen and have executed with many syndicators now, the pillars that really you need to scale your syndication business. And it starts with getting clear, knowing your personal syndication philosophy and really what you want the business to do for you, and then getting the right people and processes in place so that you can execute. And then also taking action. So how you overcome your resistance so you can really build and scale the syndication business that you want. There's a lot of exercises in there, so you can read one and then do the exercise and apply it. And I think it would be a lot of value. It's exactly what we do in a more in-depth and holding hand fashion with all of the syndicators that we work with.
So growing a business is a process, and people have done it successfully, and you can look at what they've done and how they've done it, and you distill those down into certain steps and procedures and philosophies. And we're covering a lot of that in this series. But if you want to get started on that, just send an email to scale@realestateguysradio.com, scale@realestateguysradio.com, and we'll send that to you. You can check that out. Today, we're talking about this thing called your sweet spot. And if you've read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he talks about getting the right people on the bus, and then inside the bus, getting them in the right seat. Well, that all sounds good, and it is good, but how do you do it? And so we've come up with this concept that we call the sweet spot. So Stace, explain what that is and why it's so important.
Yeah, the sweet spot in the most simplest form is getting you doing the things that energize you. So if that is for most visionary entrepreneur sales type syndicators, it's talking to people, building relationships, being the brand ambassador, and doing deals. What they don't like doing, the things that drain them, is all the desk work, computer work, tracking all of the details, setting up their CRM, setting up their automation, filing their documents, finding their documents because they put it someplace and they can never find their document. So they don't like doing any of those things. So it's figuring out a way that they can do the things that they're great at and that they love, and it energizes them and it feeds their mission and really generates positive momentum, and then minimize all the things that do not. So you have your Venn diagram of what the sweet spot is, which is where your duty, your skill, and your passion intersect. And that's usually when you're in alignment and your soul was placed here to do something and you're doing that thing, and all of your faculties are involved, you're focused, you're energized, you're in flow. That is your sweet spot. And the more time you can spend there, the happier you're going to be, the more fulfilled you're going to be, which is going to make you a better leader, a better spouse, a better son, daughter, friend, teammate. All of the different roles you play in your life, you will be better. So this doesn't just serve building your syndication business. This serves your community, your family, the world in a much greater way if we can get you in your sweet spot.
So yeah, so this concept of you got one collection of items that's your duty. This is everything that needs to be done. Now, when you're a business owner, it's everything that needs to be done. It's not like these are the things I have to do. It is everything that absolutely needs to be done. And when you start a business as a one man or woman operation, everything that has to be done is on your plate. The idea of scaling your business is getting those things off your plate. And there's a process for doing that. And this is kind of where it starts. And so everything that needs to be done goes into this one area. And then you have everything that you love to do, and there's going to be some overlap. And so you've got this, if I can do this, I don't know if I can do this correctly, but you've got this one circle that is your duty. You've got this other circle that is your passion. And then you've got this other circle that is your skill. And at the intersection of all of those things, yes, that's exactly what it looks like. There is that star, and that is your sweet spot. And so what you're going to find out is there's going to be things that are part of your duty that are not part of your skill or part of your passion. Those are the first things you want to get rid of because you hate doing it and you're no good at them. The chances are those are probably a lot of things that aren't even getting done and you're falling behind and they're creating liabilities in your business. The skill part is what you're really good at, and it may need to be done, but you dislike doing it. Those are things that you're qualified to actually train people. You create policies and procedures with the help of someone like Staci to get that off your plate. And then you're going to have things that need to be done that you're passionate about that you're no good at. You're going to need to get rid of those too, because even though you love doing it, like I like to sing, but nobody likes to hear me sing. So I only sing when I'm alone. I don't add any value to the world by singing, right? So there's certain things that you love to do that you're just not good at. And even though they may need to be done, you're not the person who should be doing them. And of course, you kind of get the idea. So this is the concept of sweet spot, but it's bigger than just you. It starts with you because this is how you decide what to delegate, but it actually is part of a process for building a team. So Stace, explain how that works.
So everyone has a sweet spot. So you have yours as the visionary, but your entire team, each of them, there's going to be people who are more creative, people who are more analytical, people who are more interactive. So everyone's going to have what their sweet spot is. So your job or my job as a leader is to pull that out of them as well. And sometimes they don't even know. And so you have to put people in seats and then they find out, hey, I don't like this. It's not in alignment for me. And then we have to make adjustments. And you may experience that same thing. You may think that this is what is my sweet spot. And then you put it into practice and you're like, there's parts of this that aren't my sweet spot. So we learn as we do. We don't learn just sitting and thinking about what our sweet spot is. We learn by actually getting out there and doing it. And then we figure it out. So putting people in their sweet spot is the spot where their faculties are fully engaged. So when you're working through a team, you don't want robots. You want people who can get the job done, but they take their brain with them. So they're constantly thinking of ways to improve it, to make it better, to streamline it, to cut costs, to mitigate risks, to set us up for our next strategic move. Build better raving fans, generate more revenue. You want all of your people having that mindset. So you need to get them in their sweet spot so they stay fully engaged, and then congratulate them, challenge them, and encourage them, because most high performers or A players want a level of accountability, want a challenge, and they want to know if they're hitting the mark or not. So as a leader, that's the community and culture we need to create so that we can build our business through building people.
Yeah, folks want to, they want to run for a prize. They don't mind competing. They don't mind pushing themselves, but they want to win the prize, which is your praise. It could be a financial reward. There is a sense of satisfaction of a job well done if the definition of a job well done is clearly defined and people know what they're aiming at. But here's one of the things that I learned that's super important, and I'm going to wear this as a badge of honor, even though it was a major liability, but I never wanted to give anybody work that I wasn't willing to do myself. I always felt guilty asking somebody to do something that I didn't want to do, I didn't like to do. And so I, trying to be a nice person, would hold on to things and not give it to people. In hindsight, it seems so stupid because there are people actually out there who love to do the things that I absolutely hate to do. They love it. it's their sweet spot. But I didn't understand that concept back then. And so, I didn't realize that I'm kind of a unique animal. And as an entrepreneur, you just have to realize you're unique. You're kind of rare. And there's not a lot of people out there like you. That's why there's a lot more job seekers than there are job creators. And that's okay, because the concept of sweet spot, the way Staci's describing it, allows somebody who is a job seeker to have a job they feel like they own, and they will own it, and they will be innovative, and they will be creative, and they will be energized the same way you are about building your business. It's just that their business fits inside of your business and grows your business. And so I don't care for employee mentality, what I define employee mentality, because that to me is somebody who comes to work and only does what they have to do because they have to, that only does the minimum amount necessary to not get fired, that never brings an idea, will do a dumb process and run something right into the ground because they're just apathetic. They don't care. So when I think of a typical employee, that's what I would think of. And I think, well, you can't find any good people. Then I woke up one day and realized, no, the problem wasn't the people, it was me. And what I didn't understand was I wasn't putting people in a position to succeed. I was putting them in a position to fail. And then when they failed, I was angry at them and crushed their spirit. It was 100% wrong. And it was such a simple thing to fix. And the way you fix it is understanding this concept of sweet spot. And because it is iterative, it's like building a romantic relationship, or any type of a human relationship. You don't just nail it in the first interaction. There's a back and forth as you learn what people like, what they will tolerate, what they don't like, what they won't tolerate. And you learn how to make somebody smile. You learn how to make them happy. And if you care about the person, you're continually modifying the relationship, as long as it doesn't compromise who you are, to get them into that sweet place. And when you find somebody that you've got that interlock with, now you've got this basis for an engagement that can last a very, very long time, maybe an entire lifetime. And
Mhm.
that's true in business too. That's how you retain employees, and all that. So how, and get their best effort out of it. So Stace, we've kind of described the process, but in the real world, when you're doing this with folks, when you're onboarding people, how do you flush that out? And then once they're in, how do you test and iterate? How does all that work?
So in the 3-day, we draw it all out. In theory, we think, okay, this person's sweet spot is X, Y, and Z, which it's typically brand ambassador, content creator, relationship builder, deal doer. That's typically the seat.
Meaning the entrepreneur, the
The
syndicator.
entrepreneur,
Yeah.
yeah, that is typically the seat that they want to be in. If they aren't executing, they're not in their sweet spot seat. So if week after week we're asking them to do something and they're not doing it, they're not in their sweet spot because there's way too much resistance. So I actually just did this exercise the other day with one of our clients. So we then list out everything again of what they're doing. And on a scale of 1 to 10, we rank them. And we say 1 is the lowest, 10 is the most. So we rank them. And then if they have to do it, we put the thing that is, we also rank their energy level throughout the day. So a lot of times people don't have the most energy, maybe between 2 and 5. So we don't put the things that are 1s between 2 and 5. We put the things that they love between 2 and 5, and the things that they don't like that much when they have the highest energy. So, and then we test that out and we say, okay, maybe this schedule will work. Maybe we can get them to execute better if we compare energy with activity and so forth. We try that. If they're still not executing, they're just not in their sweet spot. So we just keep fine tuning until we can nail it. I think the biggest litmus test is if you aren't doing the thing, you don't like to do it.
Yeah. And here's the thing, when you have a relationship with your folks where it's okay for them to push back on things they don't like doing, and then when they can see in you a genuine effort to help them create a job that doesn't fit an organizational chart, but fits them as a unique human being, and you reorganize your business in a way, uh, to build around the people, this flies in the face of the idea that human beings are robots that maybe grew out of the assembly line industrial age where people were interchangeable components. We have robots today who do most of that stuff. Most of the type of work that people are still doing is work that is human, is creative, is requires thought. And this doesn't mean, and we should talk about this too, Stace, that people are out there making it up as they go along. There's a process that they are supposed to follow and a process for modifying the process so that people aren't going rogue, and so that the things that you've established as best practices are built around what's best for the organization first, and then modifying them within the constraints of what's best for the organization for the person sitting in the seat. Because part of the process of building a scalable business is having redundancy. And so if you've got a vital function that somebody's sitting on and they're in their sweet spot, and you have to put somebody else into that seat, that person, may or may not be, completely in the sweet spot. And so you can't change the processes to put that person who's the backup in their sweet spot. So there's obviously some give and take. And this is where I think the camaraderie, you spent a lot of time building team, and the desire for the team members to serve other team members and do unpleasant tasks for them just in order to give their teammate a little bit of space, a little bit of freedom, a little bit of time off, or whatever. And the goodwill that you build by having people in their sweet spot most of the time, and the effort that you put into doing that, gives them the fuel, and you the relationship capital in their bank, their emotional tank, if you will, so that when they are called upon to do things above and beyond, things that they don't actually care for, they still show up big, more out of love than for the organization and the team than out of love for the task. Does that make sense, Stace?
Yeah, I also I think it's also managing expectations. The goal, like if life was perfect, we would all live in our sweet spot. That's not reality. So setting the expectation that we're going to do our best to put you in your sweet spot, but there are things that you're just going to have to do that aren't in your sweet spot. So that's the expectation up front. So there's not resistance when we need to execute on things that people just don't like to do. But there's usually a way that we can minimize it as much as we can. So that's important. I think the other thing is learning how people do under pressure, because that is people who only want to be in their sweet spot, or can get to a point, if you allow it, to be a little bit diva about it. Well, I want to just be in my sweet spot. Well, no, what kind of teammate are you? Within Organize to Scale, the question we ask each other a lot is, are you a good teammate? If every single one of us acted like you, managed our emotional hygiene, showed up and delivered our tasks and hit our due dates and was pleasant, if everybody was like you, what kind of culture would we have? Or if the opposite is true, if you're huffing and puffing and venting and not hitting your deadlines, what kind of company would we have if everybody acted like that? So we have a high level of just personal self-reflection so that we can create a culture where people are in their sweet spot and they're aware of how it impacts the entire team and then our customers and so forth.
Yeah, so I think if you're sitting here and you've come out of a corporate background and you're used to working in a business that has hundreds or maybe thousands of employees, you don't have this kind of situation. You can't. It's just very difficult to manage at a corporate level. So big corporations don't behave that way. This level of freedom, this level of creativity may be completely foreign to you. And the flip side of it is, if you've never been in any type of an organization, you've always been a solopreneur, a solo practitioner, whatever it is that you do, and you've just kind of lived in your own mind and lived on your own schedule, and you've never had to delegate, elevate, motivate, do any of those things, you may be equally lost. This is this in-between space where most entrepreneurs actually live. Very few people build an Apple or a Microsoft or a Tesla or an Amazon. Very few entrepreneurs are going to do that. Most of us are going to build a business that does a few $1 million in revenue, maybe 10 or 20, $30 million in revenue, which is very, very doable in the syndication business, which is great. You can make a ton of money, but you can do it with a relatively small team. Even Kenny McElroy's got 250 some odd employees, but he's got a great, great culture. He cares about his people. He knows them as individuals. They do things like the things we're talking about that build team and camaraderie, and they do book studies. I mean, those are the types of things that you can do in organizations that are manageable in terms of a human relationship point of view. If you've ever been part of like a mega church where there's 5,000, 10,000 people, you just don't have personal relationships with the congregation. That's why those big churches create small groups and verticals where people can get together and have more human community. But if you've been part of a small church where there's 100, 200 people, you know everybody. And if you're in there long enough, you get to know everybody, you interact, you raise your kids together, you're doing activities, you're serving the community together, all that kind of thing. That's more what like being an entrepreneur in a small business. And what we're talking about here in organizing your syndication business to scale is how do you go from being a one person operator where your investor capital is 100% dependent upon you, your mental health, your focus, your skill, your physical health, your availability, your discipline. That's a lot. And that's a lot of risk for your investors. It's actually a competitive edge when you can point to a team that you've built. And then it's a lot of pressure on you to perform. And the fact is most of us can perform at a high level for a short period of time. Some of us can do it for a medium length of a time, year or two. We can go hard. Very few of us can keep it up for 10 or 20 years, right? After 10 or 20 years, we just fry, and you make some money and you go off and pursue other interests because people change. But you can build a business that will continue to carry on and give you the freedom to go do those things without reneging on any of your commitments or obligations to your organization or to your investors. But the things that we're talking about is how you get there. And a big part of it is getting the right people in the right seats, which is a concept, of course, we borrow from Jim Collins in his great book, Good to Great. So Stace, talk a little bit about that process of getting the right people in the right seats, because it's not just everybody in their sweet spot. There's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the book Traction, they talk about get it, want it, and capacity to do it. And it's G.W.C. So somebody may want to do something, but they don't have the capacity. And capacity could mean that they don't have the time, they don't have the skill, they don't have the emotional capacity, the intellectual capacity. And so it's not a match. Somebody could get it, but they really don't want to do it, and they could have the capacity to do it. But if they don't have all three, it's really not the right person in the right seat. So figuring out, do they get it, do they want it, and do they have the capacity to do it? And then hopefully also pairing that with what their sweet spot is. And then you have the right person in the right seat. And then you keep your thumb on the pulse. Is this still working? How's it working? Do you still have capacity? And so we have ongoing dialogues weekly about where you at, how are you feeling? Are things going well? Do you need help? Do you need support? Do we need to delegate anything? And it's an open door in our culture that if they need help or they aren't happy, that they can just come and say it. Or if they're thrilled and they love it, they say, I have more capacity. I have more capacity. This is my favorite thing to do. And we give them more of that. We double down on that momentum of that person loving that thing, and they can just go to town with it. And so it's that's kind of our process: get it, want it, and capacity to do it.
Yeah. So if it sounds like a lot of work, it is. But here's the payoff. Most people build a business that owns them. In other words, you go off and you make a bunch of promises to customers, promises to people, and then you wake up one day and you have this plate full of responsibilities, some of which you like, some of which you don't like, some of which you're good at, some of which you're not good at, but all things need to be done, and the buck stops with you and you have to do it. And the problem is the business is only ever going to be as big as your personal capacity. Even when you start to offload some of those things, you still end up being a bottleneck. And so the key to being free is to move from what Robert Kiyosaki in Cash Flow Quadrant, going from the S where you're a one man or woman band to a B where you're a business owner and the business actually runs without you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't work in the business. It doesn't mean you don't work on the business. It just means that if you went away and decided to take a 3-month vacation, the business would still continue. Nothing would really change because you've got all of this in place. So the work is not to do the work of the business. The work is to build a business that ultimately doesn't need you in it. And that's the ultimate security for your investors. It is the ultimate security for your team. And it's the ultimate joy for you to have that entrepreneurial freedom to go experiment and do new things without feeling like you're reneging on all of the commitments that you'd made to get to that place. Right? It's fine to say, hey, I got mine. I hope it works out for you guys. I'm abandoning ship because I want to go chase shiny objects. I don't think any good person really wants to be that person. And then you end up being married, if you will, to a job, a responsibility, a business, a set of tasks on a daily basis that are no longer filling your tank, that are no longer satisfying you. You've moved yourself out of your sweet spot, and you don't want to do that. So yeah, it is hard work, but I'll tell you what, it's worth it. And if you will put the work in, it's not as much work as you think. Part of the reason it seems like a lot of work is not because you're not willing to do it, or you're not capable of doing it, it's because you just don't know what to do. And the whole point of this series is to let you know there are ways to do this. People are doing it. You can do it too. So to get started, you can order Staci's report, 4 tips to how to organize your business to scale. Just send an email to scale@realestateguysradio.com. In our next video, we're going to talk about the 4 key pillars to scaling your business, which is kind of a play on that same theme, but you can get a sneak preview by ordering the free report. Staci, any closing comments on this section?
Your business will be completely transformed when everyone is in their sweet spot. Everyone will be so much happier and productivity will go through the roof. So it's worth it to do this for sure.
Absolutely. So we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching. And if you want that report from Staci, just send an email to scale@realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for watching. Before you go, 3 things. Number 1, subscribe. When you subscribe, you build up our subscription base, and that helps us reach more people. But even more important, it helps us attract great guests and subject matter experts to share their ideas and information with you. Number 2, click that notification bell to make sure that when we do post a new video on this hot topic, you're notified right away. And number 3, share. Please share this information with friends. Help them get on board this bus. Help them protect and preserve their wealth to take advantage of what's going on in the world today. All right. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next video.